How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. I went to this workshop.
You did?
On Saturday, yes, on the Enneagram, which was something that I have heard a lot about, being in Christian communities, and like coming from, I went to Creighton, so it's a Jesuit Catholic university, and they're big into it. And it's kind of like a personality assessment, a personality paradigm of understanding. And I've always been a little like hesitant about it, but I wanted to learn more. And so I decided to sign up for it. I have a friend that works for the organization that was putting it on, and so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go. So I bought the book of the guy who was doing it and read that ahead of time.
Was that a requirement?
No.
I guess some people do that in their
Some
life.
people do that.
They just learn before the learning.
The learning. Well, yeah, I wanted to get some context.
Could be easy today.
It's gonna be so easy. Wanted to get some context, like stepping into, into the workshop, just because I feel like I have very little understanding of this paradigm of personality, and so I wanted to have this just because I feel like I know strengths so well. I'm well versed in Myers-Briggs, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and so. But I have very little understanding beyond like what my own type is. So it's like a 9 type personality, and they said it is rooted in kind of ancient spiritual practice. But I am very hesitant about putting that label on it because there's not a lot of history of it beyond like it's really started resurfacing in the 70s and 80s. And so, yeah, I just kind of learned about it, but it's been something that kind of just came along at the right time, just kind of in my life, because I've really been processing some of my deeper blind spots, my deeper patterns that are like ingrained into how I do things in order to grow, in order to become a better version of myself. And so the thing that I was hesitant about when I was first introduced to the Enneagram is it's so insanely negative. It's very negative. And it tells you you at your most extreme negative. And so even as you kind of are looking through the results, there's not like one test to take, but as you're looking through it, it kind of tells you at your best, which is not possible as a human to get to that point, but also at your worst. And my worst of my type is like, you are a sociopath. And so I'm like, I was like, okay,
Well, it's the shadow side.
Yep.
It's the shadow side work, which I always think that our commonalities are amazing, and the cosmic timing of things, you just can't make it up. But I've been doing some similar work recently in shadow side, based on what I remember from intro psych.
Nice.
Really, this is all Carl Jung's. It's like, so I'm getting my old intro psych book out, which is from 1990. I'm really excited about just kind of revisiting and thinking about, I think because, and I've been writing about this a couple times on my my personal blog, when you get real with yourself and you pause in the present, you have to address some of your darker pieces. And with the strengths language and with growth mindset and everything that I teach and train to, it doesn't come naturally for me to look at the difficult. First of all, that I love. This came from Anastasia Company here in Omaha.
Nice.
So this was from the little craft fair that I went to at the waiting room.
Yep.
And I love this. And I have, since I started really kind of looking at some of the shadow side stuff, this has been my notebook.
Oh, okay. So same here. I actually just started this like last week, but that's when I've really been starting to get into this. But this is from the afternoon. here in
love
Omaha,
that
but
store.
they didn't make it. It's from Fringe Studios in Culver City, California, and this says to unpathed waters and undreamed shores.
What I loved about it, and when I noticed it, it's the dark and the light
Yeah,
contrast.
yeah. It's interesting. But as I've been thinking kind of about this, and it's so interesting that kind of synchronicity with us both going
Yes.
through this process at the same time, I've been thinking a lot about strengths and how it's hard sometimes with strengths because all of the language is so positive that if you don't really intentionally choose to dig into it, you can live here with strengths. You can live very much on the surface level. You can live very much if this is what is good and right about me, which is so true. But it can sometimes lead too much focus on the 2-sentence definitions of strengths, and even the paragraph definition of strengths can lead to a lack of understanding of the blind spots of strengths, because every single one of these strengths has blind spots,
And a
has
basement.
tendencies,
Yeah.
has Gallup calls that basement of this strength. And so it's so interesting to think if you intentionally choose. So as I was kind of as we were talking a little bit kind of before this, I was saying that strengths lives up here, and even a lot of the material, a lot of the resources, but it's an invitation to go deep.
Yeah.
Like there's an invitation to say, how can I look at this at a really intense level? How can I look at it with an understanding of my shadow side, an understanding of where I slip into the basement? And I think the beauty of doing that kind of deep work with strengths is to say, when I understand what my tendencies are when I slip into the basement and you start to identify it, it helps you get out of the basement quicker.
Yes.
You're never not going to fall into the basement of your strengths. You're never going to be happy-go-lucky all the time, and you're never going to be able to love everyone all the time. No one's ever going to see your strengths all the time as the best. You're always going to slip into the basement within various parts of your life, but doing the deep work of identifying what it looks like or what those tendencies are, or even what your own patterns. Okay, if I know I have a lot on my plate and I know I'm surrounded by not great people and I know I'm not eating and sleeping well, that's when I'm going to fall into the basement. Identifying those almost triggers to
Yes.
the fall will help us to pull ourselves out of it that much quicker, or to help people around us, people in community in our lives, pull us out of it quicker.
I just wrote down it allows us a quicker movement from the bad days to the good days.
Yeah.
So that we can see ourselves kind of shifting into that when we pause and we just identify it. So I mentioned to you last week, my word of the year is present, and I've been practicing trying to, when I feel an emotion, notice it and just look at it and identify it. So if something irritates me or something makes me angry, I try to stop and think, why is this frustrating to me? Why is this triggering something in me?
Good.
And then just kind of noticing it from afar. Did a super cool sound alchemy session with the amazing Lily Livingston, who is a teammates mentor who leads with empathy, connectedness, positivity, and she started her own business called Illuminating Hearts. It's sound work. And you're in a room. I was in a room on a Friday night with 70 people, and we had blindfolds on and nothing but Native American instruments and gongs and their voices. And at times, and what I loved about the way that they guided this, and the reason I bring this up is, she said, if you're feeling something, so I mean, you are literally, you see nothing.
Yeah.
And it's really loud gongs and a conch. I think that's what
Okay, yeah.
And she said, if you feel fear or anger and you clench up, it's okay, move in it. Clench
Yeah.
up. And if you need to clench up even more, but then release it. Notice
Yeah.
it. Instead of fighting it like, oh, no, I cannot feel fear.
Yes.
Just be in it. And then, I just got goosebumps talking about
is-
it. It was awesome. And something, every month I'm trying to do something to push myself out of my zone, practice the word. This month I'm going to try they're called salt baths. But they're not a bath. They're just like intense amount of Epsom salt, and I'm a big believer in Epsom salt. So each month I'm trying to do something, and so I just happened to be in a position where I could go to this session at Omaha Power Yoga, and it was so good because it just tied in. My weekend, I did 2 things that were hilarious. One, I ran a 5K in 18-degree weather. I mostly had frozen snot on my face, and someone wanted to take a photo and put it on Metro Magazine. And
What?
Yes. I got up in the morning, I'm like, I'm going to look terrible. It doesn't matter. There's going to be 10 runners maybe. I'm going to be so cold. I'm not putting any makeup on. Didn't even do my eyebrows or anything. Not doing this. I'm just going out. I get there and I'm in photos. I come back, snot dried to my face, walk into the elementary school, and who do I see but Jerlene? And we had what I like to call, Mike refers to it as the high V moment, when Jerlene and I have seen each other unexpectedly.
Yeah.
It's just so many different, elevation
you can
of light.
imagine. Like, you need earplugs if you're in
He always says, I could be 7 rows over and hear you too.
Yeah.
So I saw her when I came in, and I'm sure people were like, why is this
gosh.
really nice lady who's the speaker hugging this person with frozen snot on their face? Anyway, Jolene did a wonderful job talking about, as a mentor, because she's a mentor, where I'm a mentor. And she said, runners are naturally already predispositioned to be mentors, because she was talking about, you all just went and did this on purpose today in 18-degree weather. You ran 5K. She talked about how we're just born to do it, and it was a great, I won't give it all away because it was a beautiful speech, but it was just how we're naturally predispositioned. And she talked about just the impact that her mentee has had on her life. It was really cool. I did that, and then yesterday went roller skating with my family.
Wow.
And my knees today need Epsom and a lot of things, but we had so much fun. Lauren and Sean and I were the ones that skated the most. I could not believe it. Sean kept going and we just did it. But my highlight, no injuries either. Either the run or roller skating.
That is so surprising.
I didn't even trip. You know that meme where there's that kid that's like,
Yep.
you know? Yes.
Yep.
They had that on the wall at the roller rink. Went roller skating, didn't fall once. And I kept going,
That's me.
that's me today.
I love that declaration.
But I was thinking about how being present means so, it's totally spanning the gamut for me this year.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that work is in
Yeah.
some challenging, difficult stuff. But some of that also is just being absolutely 100% in joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can find joy more often now because I'm able to identify when I'm kind of slipping into those basement moments.
Yeah.
And I think I'm enjoying the light.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday was just absolutely so much fun and lots of laughs. And I am 43 and roller skating. Got a pretty good video, except my brother, I think, calls me a moron at the end. So I don't know if I should share that with anybody.
Okay, so I want to know, as you have said, like you're able to identify easier kind of when you slip into those basement moments. How did you come to an understanding of identifying those? How have you understood your strengths, or what were maybe some practical things that you did in order to identify when you slip into that?
I think the work that I'm doing to prep for the Purpose Academy, that everybody who told me read this, you were absolutely accurate. It was very difficult for me. I'll probably even struggle to talk about it. I do not like to think about difficult things. And to read this book,
It's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
to read this and to think about, and this is my empathy, to think about being, to think about what they went through is almost unbearable for me. So I would read a little bit and then I'd have to put it down, and I just couldn't handle it. And it took me a long time, and I'm still just now getting into the logotherapy piece, but how they found joy. And I loved what he spoke about in suffering. And you can have everything taken from you except for what you feel and what your visions are, of your past memories or memories of the future. And so I thought about that a lot.
Yeah.
Because, and then how some people continued to suffer even after they were released. And just about that finding joy in moments. I mean, he was a remarkable man. I mean, just incredibly brilliant in so many ways. But, reading about how they put together, musicals and singing performances and, ways that they tried to find joy in the worst, the absolute worst of conditions. That kind of started it. Plus, I've been doing a lot of just great personal work. The Simple Abundance book that I read, that timing on shadow side was all right in there. Reading a little bit more, Debbie Ford has an awesome book about the shadow side. Just a great reminder that if you don't tap into that, the light can't get in. I mean, you have to really be able to see and identify that. So I don't think I had any idea that when I chose present as my word of the year, that it was going to be difficult. Like, my 2018 has been rough so far. And I think I chose it like, yay, I'm going to be present. I'm going to do more yoga. And then it's been like, oh no, you have to be present in yucky stuff and some challenging stuff. So you're just going to have to be in that.
Yeah.
And so, again, synchronicity, meant to be, glad. Because I think it's helping me grow. My guess is I'm going to look back at 2018 and see this as a great year of growth.
Yeah.
Personal growth. But I'm kind of staying close here. And a couple of my closest friends have said, you're quiet. What's going on with that? And when I'm able, and when they push a little bit, I'm able to talk a little bit about some of this work, and they're like, me too.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed at how many people are like,
yeah, it's, I don't know what is going on in the atmosphere, or whatever you want to call it.
Cosmic universe.
Yeah. I have a friend who I'm really working with her as well to help her get to a place of healing and wholeness. And she's had some really bad things happen to her in her life, not any of which she wished upon herself, but was kind of where she landed, her family of origin, and kind of the lot that she was given, and so she's working through this book and workbook called The Wounded Heart, and I don't recall the author of it, and so I apologize, but all these books and references we'll make sure we add to the worth mentioning Pinterest board, so you all have access to that. But she sent me many quotes, but the one that stuck out the most to me, which you can reference, but on my strengths, but it was, you will never be able to heal from the past if you choose not to live it anymore. Like, in order to bring healing to your past, you have to relive it. You have to go through it again. And I think that is so good as I think about identifying our shadow sides or identifying our basements. I think our tendency as humans is to move away from pain. And so when we have a bad day, we have a day that just sucks, all we want to do is forget about it.
Yes.
But I think that you can't come to a full understanding of your basements, of your shadow side, unless you choose to relive it, choose to examine those days, even if it's like, okay, all I want to do is go to sleep, all I want to do is move on, all I want to do is wish for a better day. When I take a look and say, what made that day so bad? What made that moment so hard? And choose to think through it and say, okay, well, my context was in the basement because I didn't know or understand what was going on. Or
right.
I had to do this crazy monotonous work of whatever it was, and so I couldn't utilize my strategic to make fun decisions and my adaptability to spur the moment go on, to a lunch with someone, those things. As I look and see where my strengths weren't honored, where my strengths fell into the basement, as I choose to relive those days, it brings light to those days. I have a greater understanding of why that happened, but also what then my tendencies are, those negative tendencies when I slip into the basement, when I slip into the dark side or the shadow side of my personality.
Right.
And so that's where I just want to challenge us as we lean into being present. And I don't know if I've talked a whole lot. My word for the year is learning to wait well. So spending the time, which is just so funny with all this work. So it's about waiting well, and this whole idea, and I've shared with some people, I have a very strong faith of and I'm kind of in a younger part of my life, and so I don't feel like I'm necessarily where I'm going to land. And we talked a lot last time of what does that even mean, where you're going to be or who you're going to be. But this idea of in the in-between times, there are times for growth and for pruning and for becoming better versions of ourselves. And so I'm utilizing whatever that means of waiting well, like choosing not to numb while I wait or not to pass the time, such as easy expression. We say, oh, how am I going to pass this hour? How am I going to pass this time? Choosing to utilize that time in order to wait well. And one of the big things that I did in my life, I don't know if I've talked about it with this group, but I got rid of my TV. And I canceled my Netflix subscription. I canceled my Hulu subscription.
I'm a huge fan of this.
I got rid, and so when I come home at night, because I would have such a tendency, and I have pretty busy days, so it might be 8 or 9 o'clock till I get home most days, I would just numb. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just need to relax. And so I'd watch 30 minutes of a TV show, which isn't innately bad in and of itself, but I wasn't leaning in. You know, I wasn't present. I wasn't taking a moment to think back through the day, and so I've chosen to read. I think I've read 5 books in the last month because I'm utilizing my time better, and I'm learning, and I'm digging in to what is going on in my life instead of disengaging. Like, I'm choosing to lean into it.
I love that. And I hope my kids watch this. I know they don't, but I could say all kinds of things, Lauren and Sean. When they were little, Monday through Thursday, for sure, there were no screens. Because we had too much going on. We had basketball practice and we had piano practice, and I mean, they were just so busy, they had homework. And so we just made this rule, no screens. And that applied to the parents too. Mm-hmm. And I remember and we had this great conversation yesterday about I was listening to NPR on the way to pick them up, and they get in the car, and within 30 seconds I'm like, what do you guys think about this? And Sean's like, I can't get out of the car. But there's some research that has come out about the way that we raise our kids, boys and girls, in regarding how they see themselves.
Yeah.
So I was asking them questions, and I said, you know, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about this? What do you think about this? And Sean goes, I think that we're weird. He goes, I think that you are an absolute outlier. And I was like, tell me more. And he goes, do you know what outlier means? And I said, yes, Sean. So the word I was trying to find was anomaly, and I couldn't think of it.
Okay.
So this morning I texted both kids saying, the word I was trying to think of was anomaly. I think we parented them very differently, because I was like, we just don't need this distraction. It's too much distraction for you, little one. So we'll participate in it too. Well, I don't like screens. I watch very, very little TV. We got a landline. Mike and I got a landline because I want the phone out of the bedroom.
Yeah.
Completely. I don't want that blue light in there anymore. And so I said we need a landline so that we get emergency calls.
Yeah.
And
That's
so I
good.
text both kids, by the way, I got a landline, and
Oh no.
you are again an outlier. And I said, here's the number. Otherwise it interrupts my sleep. I know that. And sleep's very important to me.
Oh my goodness.
So I love that you're not doing TV, but what I think is hilarious is I've started to try to incorporate a little bit of TV to find a little bit of joy.
Yeah.
So Parks and Rec has become my hilarity joy.
Yeah.
Like, because but then I can turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Except for a couple weekends ago on a Saturday, I watched 8 episodes until 1 o'clock in the morning. It was like when Ron Swanson has a basketball team and they do the Swanson. It was it's that season 3. Lauren goes, don't start it, Mom. Season 3 is really good. Don't start. I said, oh, I can watch one.
Like, I'll be fine.
I watched like 5. And I saw how quickly I could.
Yeah. Oh, just one more. Oh,
yes.
Just one more.
Yes.
Yep,
and you guys, we didn't have that when I watched TV as a kid.
Yeah.
You watched what was on Channel 5, Channel 10,
Yeah.
and then maybe Channel 8 later on. Otherwise, and then it was a knobby thing that you turned.
And you had to physically get up from the couch to go change it.
And then we got a satellite. And most of the time, I mean, there were maybe, I think we had 10 channels and we thought we were rich. And it was that huge, big satellite out in the yard, you know, like you could put 25 humans on now. But it's amazing to me how, at the time when TV started to become a thing, I tended to gravitate away from it.
Yeah.
But I think it was because I could see how easily it could consume my kids. They didn't have iPads. They didn't have any of those things until they got older. And, you know, if you spend any time around Lauren, you'll see she's on that screen quite a bit. And I'll say, I need you to put your screens down. You know, we're in this. And we do talk, I mean, quite a bit. But I think what's interesting to me is you've said, and I'm trying now to incorporate one show. But, and we had said last time to talk about our favorite TV shows.
Oh.
That was kind of what we left them with.
Okay.
And so I will say that Parks and Rec has become, you guys are brilliant to have known this the whole time, and I'm so sorry it took me so long. And also, Amy Poehler is Jerlene.
Oh my gosh, yes!
When I saw Jerlene, I was like, do you watch Parks and Rec? I mean, that's my new question. Do you watch Parks and Rec? Do you know what I'm talking about? The guy on the Twilight guy who handcuffs himself, I laughed so hard throughout that. I mean, time capsule, that was hilarious. But when I was growing up, my favorite TV show was Knots Landing.
Okay.
Knots Landing was, have you heard of Dallas?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Dallas was kind of like a soap opera, but it was on like a Friday night. Knots Landing was a Thursday night, 9 o'clock show, and it was basically like a soap opera. And so they had all of these characters, and they were all just full of drama, tied to one another. There were murders, all kinds of things, but not scary. But it was kind of pushing the envelope. Oh, this is hilarious to me. Knots Landing was pushing the envelope at the time. There was nothing like true crime shows. So Knots Landing and Dallas, who shot JR, was the biggest mystery of, I mean, if you look it up, it was just a huge 80s pop culture thing to figure out who shot JR.
Yeah.
I loved that. The Muppets. The Muppets remain my favorite show, and when that was canceled, I cried. Also, I love Austin City Limits. We watched that in CBS Sunday morning.
Austin City Limits. I just had a conversation about my dad was just talking about that because I'm headed down to Dallas in a few weeks, and I'm planning on going to Austin for a couple days, and because everyone has told me how much I'm going to love Austin, and so
it's on my list.
I'm going down, and so he was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, Austin City Limits. Like,
Brandy Carlisle was on, or is on, coming up on Tuesday. Austin City Limits, CBS Sunday morning, Parks and Rec. But over the years, that Muppets and Knots Landing were it. Did you have a favorite show when you were a kid?
Like what age range?
Teenager.
Yeah, Forensic Files.
What?
That's my favorite show.
As a teenager?
Oh yeah.
Jeez Louise. I don't even
so predictable. It's kind of crazy, but I did like I watched One Tree Hill because all of my friends knew about it, and so that's like a melodrama. It's
like Melrose Place.
I have no idea what Melrose Place. Like I've heard of that, but okay. Hannah says yes.
Okay.
Like 90210.
Okay.
Like those.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like a
which is kind of like
tween,
Well, it's kind of what Knots Landing was, except for Knots Landing was older people.
Okay. So this is like they were like in high school when it started or whatever. So like all my friends were watching that, so I watched that. Then my guilty pleasure was Forensic Files, and they were the best because it would go through a whole case in like 30 minutes, which was great, and it talked about just. So maybe that's where a lot of some of my distrust with criminology comes from, but that's a whole different story. But
that's
anyway,
still on.
It is.
Yeah, Mike loves that show.
On.
He watches it.
It's so great, and it was like it was always on. So I would just like. Whenever I didn't have something to watch, Forensic Files was there,
So when you were growing up, you already had 50 stations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
So when you were little, like a 5-year-old, what did you watch? Did you have Saturday morning cartoons?
We did, but I don't think we did that as much. My family was big we watched VeggieTales all the time. Because I've learned like I was Disney deprived a little bit as a child. Like there's a lot of Disney movies that are out that I didn't actually
Hannah's
watch.
crying for you. Over there.
I know. It's okay. She's like my child will not. No worries.
My child will not be Disney deprived.
But so I watched like a lot of VeggieTales. We watched Mr. Rogers a lot. Like Mr. Rogers reruns, and so we were a little bit more old school in that way.
What was the show that I had to explain to you the other day? Beaver Cleaver. I made a reference to Beaver Cleaver. Mm-hmm. Someone has a Beaver Cleaver family, I think I said, and you were like, okay, pause.
I'm getting better about like, instead of, okay, I'm just going to Google this, about like, okay, well, explain that to me. I don't understand. I don't know. And I've heard of like June Cleaver and, that kind of,
And when you think about iconically, generationally, there were shows that just were part of that.
Yeah.
So the June Cleaver was the epitome of what was deemed to be a wife
Yeah.
in the late 50s. And then when I think about Knots Landing, I'm not sure that any of us should have been seeing that as an example of what people were. But you saw hairstyles replicated, but there was a whole generation of everyone trying to replicate that look.
Interesting. You'll have to find a picture of it and put it on our
Abby?
Pinterest page. Yeah.
Gosh, what was her last name? I know all of the Dallas people's last name were Krebs. I don't know what the, I'll have to look it up. I know there are people who are watching that know what I'm talking about. It's just not in this room currently. So we had left that with, what are your favorite TV shows? So I think it's ironic that you gravitated away. I thank you for the Parks and Rec.
Yeah, gravitated towards. That's good. I think that it's good to be conscious of what distracts us and what do we use to numb? What do we use to disengage with the world? And I think it's really like, sometimes, you know, it's good to do that. It's good to enter into that. But oftentimes we need to be really careful about that boundary. And I think, well, you know, I think it would be great for everyone to kind of do a self-assessment of where, you know, what are your coping mechanisms for life? You know, what do you use to kind of get through day to day? And where might you be overextending those boundaries? So where might you need to cut back? And then as you're doing that, I would just kind of love to challenge our listeners to really think about what was your last really bad day, and to kind of relive that and to think, why was it so bad? What happened? What events occurred? What emotions came up? Was it, you know, what made it so bad? And to kind of help us to start to identify our basement tendencies.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that we can look at the definitions and because, you know, I know my context and I can think about it in a good way, you know, this is all the bad things, so I just flip it and that's all the basement.
Right.
It isn't. That's not the case. It takes some digging. It takes time. It takes really being conscious and aware of our strengths in order to get to the basement.
And reflection.
Side of it.
I think the balcony basement exercise that I said I would send out last time and I didn't, which I will this time, it helps. It helps identify that, but it does take time and it does take reflection. When I think about, you know, part of the reason we got a landline, one of my coping mechanisms is when I can't sleep, it's Pinterest. My input cannot shut that off. So it's not a healthy numbing because it's like now I have 50 ideas for the bench that I want Mike to build on our patio.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, okay, it was
Slow down.
2 in the morning. Clearly you couldn't sleep because I have 17 notifications that you have, you know.
Sent you Pinterest.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think understanding those, and then what made it a bad day, but then also, and what I love tests that we're doing, like the last couple of times we've gone pretty deep, but this is where we are in our time together.
Yeah.
If you think about, you know, if we just did jazz hands in every Jen and Millie, that I know you don't. If we just did sunshine in every Jen and Millie, it would not be realistic.
No.
And so I think it's good as we're going into kind of thinking about what strengths looks like next year, because Tess and I are doing some really heavy duty contemplating about how to make strengths more meaningful when it comes to that training day at Gallup. And we're kind of looking at a 101 and a 201. And so, you know, there are a lot of us that have been in this work for a while that need to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And these kinds of exercises help us do that. There are some of us that are brand new to strengths, and we should probably spend a little bit more time in the balcony and talking about those, because I think you can't really dive down into the basement and the shadow side until you have identified the best of yourself.
Yeah.
How these give you a good day. And we've talked about that quite a bit. We've done a lot of strength spotting with one another. But how can we talk about, you know, when was a really bad day, what events, what emotions, where were you in the basement, and then thinking about how we pull ourselves back to those better days, or how we see the light moments. So is that the homework you'd like to give them?
Yes.
All right. I have to give credit to Janae, who pointed out my input communication, how I write things down.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea that I do this.
You have no idea you physically take your hand and write.
This is so second nature to me
Yeah.
that I do not think about it.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go,
Yep.
I got a notebook, at least one. This is second nature to me. Look at all the markings in my book. And this goes with me. It is second nature to me. And I think my input communication blend says, capture it.
Mhm.
And then I keep my notebooks for about 6 months with me when I move to a new notebook, in
Mhm.
case there are things that I need from the previous notebook that need to transfer over. I also transfer over things. So my list, here's everybody in my family strengths.
Yep.
My list of restaurants that and happy hours that I need to try is
Yep.
still here. The places I want to explore outside of Omaha. So I make sure I transfer that to the new notebook, but then I keep the old notebook with me for about 6 months in case there's a reference I need to make.
So good.
It's a little bit of that.
And a little bit of this.
Yes, yes.
That's good. That's good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
For your thoughts, and we'll look forward to hearing your musings on these questions and this homework that we have posed. So, thanks, everybody.